shadows of the past. Emily adjusted the strap of her bag on her shoulder and took one last look at the orphanage that had been her home for 19 years. The large gray brick building held memories of childhood, moments of loneliness, but also of friendship and resilience. With a deep sigh, she turned her back and walked toward the gate, her heart racing with a mix of anxiety and excitement for what was to come. On that sunny day, Emily was about to embark on a new journey. With the help of the orphanage director, she had secured a job as a domestic assistant at the mansion of Thomas Harrington, a renowned technology entrepreneur. The opportunity seemed like a distant dream, but now it was within her reach. Upon arriving at the imposing mansion, Emily was greeted by Charles, the butler who had served the Harrington family for over 30 years. His stern gaze and rigid posture intimidated Emily, but she kept her head held high, determined to show her capability. Charles formally and coldly introduced her to the mansion's rooms, his words tinged with distrust. "I hope you understand the responsibility this job requires," he said as they walked through the elegant hallways. "The Harrington family is very demanding, and they do not tolerate mistakes." Emily nodded, trying not to let her apprehension show. "I understand, Mr. Charles. I will do my best." The first few days were challenging. Charles never missed an opportunity to criticize her work, pointing out any minor slip-ups. Emily felt the pressure increase with every disapproving look from the butler, but she refused to be discouraged. Her determination was stronger than any criticism. Emily got up every day before the sun rose, beginning her tasks with admirable diligence. She cleaned the rooms, cared for the common areas, and kept the kitchen spotless. Despite Charles's constant criticisms, she was dedicated to learning and improving, absorbing every detail of how to keep the mansion in perfect order. One particularly difficult morning, Emily was cleaning the chandeliers in the living room when Charles approached. "You left a stain on the dining room table last night," he said harshly. "That is unacceptable." Emily swallowed hard, feeling the weight of Charles's words. "I'm sorry, Mr. Charles. I'll pay more attention." Charles sighed, still distrustful. "We'll see. Remember, this job demands perfection." Despite the difficulties, Emily found moments of peace while working. The mansion's garden, in particular, was a refuge where she could breathe and reflect. She would sit for a few minutes during her breaks, admiring the flowers and listening to the birds' songs. It was there that she recharged her energy and reminded herself why she was there, to build a better life for herself. That night, after a long day of work, Emily lay down on the small bed in her room at the mansion, exhausted but satisfied with her progress. Although Charles continued to be a critical and demanding presence, she knew she was learning and growing every day. Determined to prove her worth, she closed her eyes, ready to face the challenges of the next day. The sun had barely risen when Emily was already up, starting another day of work at the Harrington mansion. Her goal was simple: to show that she was capable of performing her duties with excellence, even in the face of Charles's constant criticisms. The kitchen, one of the places she enjoyed working the most, was her refuge that morning. She cleaned the surfaces carefully, lost in thoughts about her future. While Emily was absorbed in her tasks, she didn't notice the approach of firm and determined footsteps. Thomas Harrington, the family patriarch, had just returned from a long business trip. Exhaustion was evident on his face, but there was something deeper in his eyes, a silent melancholy, a burden he had carried in his heart since his daughter disappeared. Thomas entered the kitchen in search of a glass of water, but what he found left him momentarily paralyzed. Emily had her back to him, focused on her work, but the heart-shaped necklace hanging around her neck immediately caught Thomas's attention. It was impossible not to recognize that necklace. It was identical to the one his daughter was wearing on the day she disappeared. "Excuse me," said Thomas, trying to keep his voice steady but feeling a lump in his throat. Emily turned quickly, surprised by the presence of the man of the house. "Good morning, Mr. Harrington," she replied, trying to hide her nervousness. Thomas took a few steps toward her, his eyes fixed on the necklace. "That necklace, it's very beautiful. Have you had it for a long time?" Emily instinctively touched the necklace, as she always did when she was nervous. "Yes, sir. As long as I can remember, I've had this necklace. It's the only reminder I have of my past." Thomas felt a wave of conflicting emotions. The resemblance of the necklace to his lost daughter's could not be a coincidence. He needed to learn more about Emily, about her past, and how that necklace had come to her. "Interesting," said Thomas, disguising the intensity of his thoughts. "Well, I hope you're adapting well to the work here." "I'm doing my best, Mr. Harrington," replied Emily, relieved to have a friendly conversation, unlike her interactions with Charles. Thomas nodded and went to the refrigerator to get the water he had initially sought. But in his mind, a whirlwind of thoughts was forming. He needed to investigate more about this young woman and the story behind that necklace. Later that day, Thomas entered his office and called an old friend who owned a reputable detective agency. He explained the situation briefly, requesting a thorough investigation into Emily's past. Something inside him told him that this young woman could be connected to his past in a way he never imagined. Meanwhile, Emily continued her routine, unaware of the storm that was about to form around her. The necklace around her neck, a symbol of her mysterious past, now became the center of a new investigation that could change her life forever. Thomas was determined to discover the truth, no matter the cost. Thomas sat in his leather armchair in his office, the phone still in his hand. The conversation with his detective friend, Michael, had been brief but full of implications. Michael had promised to start the investigation immediately and ensure that every lead was followed with the utmost rigor. Thomas knew he could leave no stone unturned when it came to discovering the truth about Emily. A few days later, Michael contacted Thomas to arrange a meeting. The urgency in his voice made Thomas realize that something significant had been discovered. They met in a discreet cafe in the city center, away from prying eyes. "Thomas, my team has made significant progress," Michael said, wasting no time. "Emily was found in a park 17 years ago when she was about 2 years old. She was taken to an orphanage shortly afterward, where she grew up until recently leaving." Thomas listened intently, feeling his heart race. "And the necklace? Is there any clue as to who might have left her there?" Michael shook his head. "Not yet, but we're checking all available records and interviewing anyone who might remember something. The fact is, someone left her in the park with that necklace, and it doesn't seem to have been an accident." Thomas took a deep breath, assimilating the information. "So, Emily has lived without knowing anything about her past, without any idea who her parents are?" "Exactly. The orphanage had no additional information about her, only that she was found in the park with the necklace. We're trying to track down possible witnesses or any clues as to who might have left her there." The thought of his lost daughter had never been so present in Thomas's mind. Every detail of the investigation seemed to bring him closer to a revelation he both feared and longed for. He wondered how many times he had passed close to the truth without knowing. "Keep investigating, Michael. I need all the answers possible. If Emily is indeed my daughter, I can't let this opportunity slip away," Thomas said, the determination in his voice palpable. Meanwhile, at the mansion, Emily continued her daily tasks, unaware of the investigation now revolving around her life. She followed her routine meticulously, determined to prove her worth, even in the face of Charles's constant criticisms. That night, after the initial conversation with Michael, Thomas decided he couldn't wait any longer. He needed answers and knew that only a thorough investigation could provide them. He picked up the phone and called Michael again, formalizing the detective's hiring. Michael, I want you and your team to do whatever it takes to discover everything about Emily's past. Spare no effort or resources. We need answers quickly, Thomas said firmly. Don't worry, Thomas. We'll start immediately. I'll keep you informed of any progress, Michael replied, understanding the urgency and importance of the request. A few days later, Michael contacted Thomas again. He had discovered something disturbing. The man who had left Emily in the park was none other than Charles, the longtime butler of the Harringtons. Thomas was stunned to hear the news. Charles? That's unbelievable. He's always been by our side. Why? Michael explained that Charles had acted out of desperation, fearing that the arrival of a legitimate heir would threaten his position in the family. In a desperate attempt to maintain his status, he had committed the unthinkable act of abandoning Thomas's daughter. Back at the mansion, Thomas felt a burning anger and betrayal within him. He called Charles to the office, holding the evidence in his trembling hands. Charles, we need to talk. Now. Charles entered, maintaining a facade of calm, but Thomas could see the nervousness in his eyes. Yes, Mr. Harrington. How can I help you? Thomas threw the evidence on the table between them. Explain this, Charles. Explain how you could do this to my family. Charles looked at the documents, and the color drained from his face. Mr. Harrington, I can explain. There's no explanation that justifies what you did. Thomas shouted, his anger overflowing. You took my daughter, left her alone in a park. Why? Charles finally broke down, his defenses shattered. I was desperate. When I found out your daughter had been born, I feared losing my place here. I always thought that, without heirs, you'd leave everything to me. I did something terrible, and I regret it every day. Thomas looked at Charles, pain and fury mixed in his expression. You destroyed our lives, Charles. I trusted you. Please forgive me, Mr. Harrington. I was blinded by fear and ambition, Charles pleaded, tears streaming down his face. Thomas, though overwhelmed by anger, knew that justice needed to be served. He called his lawyer, and together they went to the police station to file the complaint. At the police station, Charles was arrested and confessed to his crimes. Thomas returned home feeling a mix of relief and sadness. The betrayal of someone he deeply trusted left a painful scar, but there was also a sense of justice being restored. Emily, upon learning the truth, felt a whirlwind of emotions. The revelation about her past was shocking, but the certainty that she had found her true family brought an unexpected sense of relief. Charles's arrest marked the end of a dark chapter in the Harringtons' lives. With the truth finally revealed, Thomas and Emily were determined to move forward and reclaim the lost time. The atmosphere in the mansion began to change, shifting from constant tension to one of hope and renewal. In the days that followed, Thomas decided to spend more time with his family. He reduced his work hours, delegating more responsibilities to his trusted executives. Emily, in turn, continued to integrate into the family business, but now with a new purpose: to strengthen family bonds. Dad, Emily said on a quiet afternoon, I want to learn everything about the family business, but I also want us to have time to get to know each other better. Thomas smiled, touched by his daughter's sincerity. Of course, my dear. We'll balance everything. I want you to feel part of every aspect of our lives. Every morning, father and daughter gathered for breakfast, a moment that was rarely shared before due to their busy schedules. The conversations were light and full of laughter, and Thomas delighted in hearing Emily's childhood stories at the orphanage and her dreams for the future. The Harrington mansion, once marked by secrets and tensions, now resonated with laughter and love. The halls that had witnessed years of loneliness and sadness now vibrated with life and happiness. The painful past was being replaced by a present full of promises and a future full of hope. "We're building something wonderful here," Thomas said, holding Emily's hands as they looked at the garden illuminated by the moon. "A home full of love and joy." Emily looked at her father with gratitude. "And I'm so grateful to be here with you. Let's make every day count." With that promise, the Harrington family prepared for a bright future, united by love and determined to cherish every moment together. The mansion, now a true home, was a symbol of resilience and the ability to turn pain into happiness, showing that, together, they could overcome any challenge and build a life full of joy and hope. Over time, Emily became an integral part of the Harrington family, and the bond between her and her father, Thomas, only grew stronger. They spent afternoons discussing the family business, and Thomas did not hide his pride in seeing how dedicated Emily was to learning and contributing to the company's success. But even with the new family dynamics, something still troubled Emily. What had really happened in the past, and why had Charles, the trusted butler, decided to abandon her? One day, while reviewing old documents in the office, Emily found an old letter hidden among the pages of a record book. Intrigued, she opened the letter and began to read, realizing it was an old correspondence from her mother, who had passed away shortly after her birth. "Thomas, my love," the letter began, "if anything happens to me, please take care of our daughter. I know the future may be uncertain, but I want her to know that I will always love her, no matter where she is." Emily's eyes welled up as she read her mother's words. The letter was a farewell, written in a moment of uncertainty, but full of love and hope. When she showed it to Thomas, he was silent for a moment, absorbing the meaning of his late wife's words. "I never knew about this letter," Thomas said, his voice choked with emotion. "She must have written it shortly before she passed. Emily, your mother loved you very much. And now, I know she would be proud to see the strong and determined woman you've become." Emily smiled, feeling connected to her mother in a way she had never experienced before. The letter not only brought comfort, but also renewed her determination to honor her family's legacy. As Emily and Thomas continued to rebuild their relationship, Michael, the detective hired by Thomas, had not ended his investigation. He knew that Charles was just a piece of a larger puzzle. Determined to uncover more about the Harrington family's dark past, Michael began following a new lead that led him to an old friend of Charles, a man named Henry Collins. Henry, an elderly and reclusive man, lived in a modest house on the outskirts of the city. He was known for his involvement in shady businesses, and Michael knew there might be more than Charles had revealed. After several days of attempts, Michael finally managed to arrange a meeting with Henry, who was initially reluctant to talk. "Charles was a good friend, but he was always greedy," said Henry, smoking an old cigar. "He did things he wasn't proud of, but he always justified his actions by the need to keep the position he cherished so much." Michael pressed Henry for more, especially about Charles's involvement with Emily and her disappearance. After a long pause, Henry revealed that Charles had not acted alone. "He had help," said Henry, his voice low and somber. "There was a man, a rival businessman, who wanted to hurt Thomas Harrington in any way possible. He knew that hitting his family would be the most painful blow." Michael was shocked by the revelation. This explained why Charles, usually a cautious man, had committed such a bold act. With this new information, Michael knew he needed to return to Thomas and Emily immediately. When Michael reported his findings to Thomas, the living room of the mansion fell silent. Thomas was appalled to learn that there was a hidden enemy who, years ago, had conspired against his family. He couldn't imagine that someone would be capable of such a cruel act. "Who is this man?" Thomas asked, tension visible on his face. "Who tried to destroy my family?" Michael didn't have all the details, but he knew they needed to find out more about the rival businessman. "I'm still investigating, But I know this man had a personal grudge against you, Thomas. He saw the chance to strike at your most vulnerable point and didn't hesitate." Emily, who had been listening to the conversation in silence, felt a mixture of fear and determination. "Dad, we need to find this person and ensure he never harms our family again. We can't let him continue to live unpunished for what he did." Thomas agreed with his daughter, but he also knew that dealing with such a dangerous threat required caution. "Michael, keep investigating. We need to know exactly who we're dealing with before taking any action." In the days that followed, tension at the Harrington mansion increased. Thomas and Emily began taking extra precautions, and Michael redoubled his efforts to uncover the identity of the rival businessman. The sense of impending danger loomed over them, but their determination to protect their family and seek justice only grew. After weeks of intensive investigation, Michael finally managed to uncover the identity of the man who had conspired against Thomas Harrington. His name was Victor Mason, a tech magnate who, years ago, had lost a major business opportunity to Thomas. Bitterness and envy had driven him to plan a personal vendetta, which culminated in the kidnapping of Thomas's daughter. Thomas was shaken upon hearing Victor's name. He remembered well how the man had reacted to the failure, but never imagined he would go so far. "Victor was always an ambitious man, but I never imagined his thirst for power would lead him to harm my family." Emily, upon hearing Victor's name, felt anger rise within her. "He needs to pay for what he did. We can't let him get away." Thomas agreed, but knew that dealing with Victor would require strategy. "We can't act impulsively. We need to ensure he is legally held accountable for his actions." Michael suggested a careful approach, gathering enough evidence to ensure that Victor would be prosecuted without a chance of escape. They began collecting evidence and preparing a detailed dossier to present to the authorities. Finally, the day of the confrontation arrived. Thomas, Emily, and Michael arranged a meeting with Victor in a public place. When Victor arrived, he was met with an expression of pure determination on the faces of Thomas and Emily. "Victor," Thomas began, his voice firm, "we know what you did. You tried to destroy my family, but you failed." Victor, surprised by the direct accusation, tried to defend himself. "I don't know what you're talking about, Thomas. You're delusional." Emily intervened, her gaze piercing. "We have all the evidence, Victor. We know you conspired with Charles to harm us. There's no escaping this." Victor, realizing he had been cornered, tried to negotiate. "We can resolve this another way. There's no need to involve the authorities." But Thomas was unwavering. "You will pay for what you did, Victor, and it will be at the hands of justice." With that, Michael handed the dossier over to the authorities, and Victor was arrested for his crimes. Justice was finally served, and the threat that had loomed over the Harrington family was eliminated. With Victor imprisoned and the truth finally revealed, the Harrington family began to rebuild their lives with a new sense of security and unity. Thomas and Emily, now closer than ever, were determined to make the most of every moment together and to strengthen the family business. Thomas decided it was time to expand the business and create a foundation in Emily's name, dedicated to helping orphan children and young people in vulnerable situations. "I want this foundation to be a legacy, Emily, to help those who, like you, need a chance in life." Emily was touched by the idea and embraced the project with enthusiasm. "Dad, this is the best way to honor our history. I want this foundation to be a beacon of hope for those in need." The Harrington Foundation quickly gained recognition for its work and social impact, and Emily became a central figure in the organization. She traveled to various cities, visiting orphanages and helping to create educational and support programs for underprivileged youth. Meanwhile, at the Harrington mansion, the atmosphere of love and joy prevailed. Thomas and Emily continued to share their lives, building new memories and strengthening the bonds that had been reconnected. On a spring evening, while father and daughter walked through the garden illuminated by the moon, Thomas paused for a moment to admire the glow in Emily's eyes. "I'm so proud of you, my daughter. Everything we've been through has brought us here, and I know your mother would be just as proud as I am." Emily smiled, holding her father's hand. "I'm proud of us too, Dad. We've overcome so much together, and now we can look to the future with hope and determination." The gentle wind swayed the leaves of the surrounding trees, and the sound of crickets filled the night. The Harrington mansion, once marked by secrets and betrayals, was now a true home, filled with love, resilience, and the promise of a bright future. The Harrington family, united and strengthened by the challenges they faced, was ready to continue their journey, knowing that together they could overcome any adversity and build a lasting legacy of love and compassion. The months following the creation of the Harrington Foundation were filled with hard work, but also immense satisfaction for Emily and Thomas. The foundation quickly became one of the leading charitable institutions in the country, helping thousands of children and young people find a new path in life. Emily dedicated herself entirely to the cause, knowing that she was transforming lives, just as her own life had been transformed. However, even with all the success and happiness that now permeated her life, Emily felt that something was still missing. There was a part of her past that remained shrouded in mystery, something that even Michael's investigations had not fully uncovered. Who were her real parents? And how had she been left in that park all those years ago? One afternoon, while organizing some old documents from the foundation, Emily found a small notebook she did not immediately recognize. The pages were yellowed with age, and the handwriting was familiar but not entirely known. As she flipped through the notebook, she realized it was a diary, and when she read the first page, her heart stopped for a moment. It was her mother's diary. The first entries described the joy of being pregnant, the anticipation of a daughter's arrival, and plans for the future. Emily read eagerly, her mother's words transporting her to a time she didn't remember but now felt incredibly close. However, as the pages turned, the tone of the diary changed. There was fear and uncertainty in her mother's words, a growing concern about something she didn't clearly specify. Finally, Emily reached the last entry in the diary, written shortly before her mother disappeared. "I'm scared," read the trembling writing. "Something is wrong, something I can't understand. I have the feeling that someone is watching us, that our family is in danger. If anything happens to me, I hope one day my daughter knows the truth and understands that everything I did was out of love. Thomas is a good man, but I fear he is not prepared for what's coming. My sweet Emily, if you ever read this, know that I loved you more than anything in the world." Emily felt tears streaming down her face as she read her mother's last words. The diary was like a key that opened a door to the past, revealing secrets she never imagined. She now understood the fear her mother had felt, and a new wave of determination took hold of her. Emily knew she needed to share this discovery with Thomas. That night, after dinner, she called her father for a conversation in his office. Thomas entered, curious, and when he saw the diary in Emily's hands, he felt a pang of nostalgia and pain. "Dad," Emily began, her voice still laden with emotion, "I found Mom's diary. There are so many things she wrote, so many things I never knew, but the last entry left me worried. Mom was scared, afraid of something she didn't understand. I think there's more to this story than we imagined." Thomas took the diary with care, as if it were a sacred artifact. He slowly flipped through the pages, recognizing his wife's handwriting and feeling the pain of memories returning. When he read the last entry, he closed his eyes, trying to hold back tears. "I never knew she was so afraid," Thomas said, his voice choked with emotion. "I was so focused on work, on responsibilities. Maybe if I had paid more attention, I could have done something to protect her from all of this." Emily held her father's hand, her eyes full of compassion. "Dad, you couldn't have known. No one could. But now that we do, we need to find out what really happened. We can't let the past continue to haunt us." Determined to find answers, Thomas decided to resume the investigation with Michael. They revisited all the clues and information they had gathered, but this time with a fresh perspective, considering what was written in the diary. Slowly, they began to realize that more people were involved in the Harrington family's dark past than they initially thought. Among these discoveries, they learned that before marrying Thomas, Emily's mother had worked on a confidential research project involving large sums of money and powerful interests. It was believed that she had uncovered something incriminating, something that put her life and the lives of her family in danger. Michael managed to locate an old colleague of Emily's mother, now retired and living in a small coastal town. The man, named Richard, was initially reluctant to speak, but upon seeing Emily and Thomas, he finally decided to reveal what he knew. "She was a brilliant woman with a sharp mind," Richard said, remembering his former colleague. "But I think she knew too much. There were people, powerful people, who didn't want certain information to come to light. When she started digging deeper, it became clear that they were willing to do anything to silence her." Richard explained that Emily's mother had uncovered a corruption scheme involving top executives from several companies, including Victor Mason's. When she realized the danger, she tried to protect her family but ended up caught in a deadly trap. Thomas was shocked by the revelation but also relieved to finally understand what had happened. "She tried to protect us, but she was sacrificed for it," he said, his eyes welling up. "Now, it's our turn to protect her legacy and ensure those responsible pay for what they did." With the new information in hand, Thomas and Emily decided to publicly expose the crimes that had been covered up for so many years. With the help of Michael and a team of lawyers, they gathered all the evidence and prepared a formal complaint against Victor Mason and others involved in the corruption scheme. The news was a shock to the business world. Victor, already imprisoned for his previous crimes, now faced a new series of charges that threatened to destroy everything he had built. The revelations deeply shook the market, and several prominent figures were arrested or dismissed as a result of the investigations. But for Thomas and Emily, the most important thing was to honor the memory of their wife and mother. "She always wanted to do what was right," Emily said during a press conference, holding her father's hand. "And now, finally, justice has been served. I hope she is at peace, knowing her sacrifice was not in vain." The Harrington Foundation, which was already a powerful force for social change, gained even more strength with the new donations and support it received after the revelations. Thomas and Emily decided that part of the funds would be used to create a specific whistleblower protection program in honor of Emily's mother's courage and integrity. With justice finally achieved and her mother's legacy protected, Emily and Thomas felt that a new chapter in their lives was beginning. The pain of the past was still present, but now there was also a sense of relief and hope for the future. On a sunny morning, as they walked through the mansion's garden, Thomas and Emily talked about the next steps for the foundation and their dreams for the future. "Dad, I never imagined we would find so many answers and, at the same time, so many new questions," Emily said, smiling at her father. "But I'm so happy we went through this together. I feel that now, more than ever, we are truly a family." Thomas smiled, putting his arm around his daughter's shoulders. "Me too, my dear. We've been through so many trials, but each one has made us stronger. And now, we can build something even bigger and more beautiful together." As they continued walking, they stopped in front of a new statue that had been erected in the garden, a tribute to Emily's mother. The statue depicted a woman holding a child in her arms, symbolizing the unconditional love and protection she had always wanted to give her daughter. Emily looked at the statue, tears silently streaming down her face. She will always be with us, Dad. In everything we do, in every decision we make. She guided us here, and now it's up to us to continue her legacy." Thomas nodded, emotionally moved. "Yes, Emily. And I'm sure that, wherever she is very proud of us." With one last look at the statue, father and daughter continued walking side by side, ready to face whatever the future held. The Harrington mansion, which had long been marked by secrets and pain, was now a true home, full of love, justice, and hope. The Harrington family, finally at peace with their past, was ready for a new beginning, where they could build a future filled with happiness and accomplishments. United, they knew they could overcome any challenge and that the love they shared was the most powerful force of all. If you were moved by Emily and Thomas Harrington's journey, don't let this story end here. Just like them, you too can turn challenges into opportunities and make a difference in the lives of others. Subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories, share this video with your friends and family, and leave a comment below with your thoughts on this emotional journey. And remember, life can surprise us in unexpected ways, but with courage, love, and determination, we are capable of overcoming any obstacle. Join us and be part of a community that believes in the power of love and the pursuit of justice. See you in the next story.